Welcome, everybody. It's so nice to see you. Thanks for showing up tonight. That was Carrie Cole singing from her album Circle of Fire. And she wrote that song about a place called Teotihuacan in Mexico that I've been to a few times. And she was actually nominated for a Grammy for that album. So I wanted to share that song, Finding Our Way Home. So tonight, I'll be doing kind of a sky view of what I mean by live the teachings, not the tradition. And I'm going to be sharing some teachings where it's just that. You don't need to delve into the whole tradition to get the benefit of the teaching. And they're teachings that you can actually use in your daily life as you're making your way around. It's not just for meditation, although meditation is always an integral part, I would say, of any spiritual journey. And I'd like to start, and we'll be having some inquiries, so there'll be some participation that way. We'll have a opening meditation in a few minutes, and we'll have an ending. The ending will be more experiential. It'll be a guided meditation with some music, and ending kind of a benediction poem. But again, this is going to be, we only have an hour, so I want to give you something that gives you a taste of what it is like to discover and live teachings without taking on a whole tradition. And I'd like to start with a poem. This poem is called Becoming the Lotus. And I first read this poem on a plane coming home from a retreat in Tennessee, where I was with people I had never met in Tennessee in a cabin. And it was just such an unusual experience. And that's how sometimes retreats are so worthwhile, because they take you out of your usual environment, your routine. And so you can't anticipate things. So you actually are introduced to something that you can't prepare for. And so I had that after retreat buzz, and I had a book on my lap on the plane that had been recommended by the leader of the meditation. And the book is called Awakening Osiris, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And it was written by Norma D. Ellis. And Norma D. Ellis is a woman, and she is one of the first persons who actually would translate the hieroglyphs in Egypt and translate it and use that. And she translated the Egyptian Book of the Dead, but she wasn't a scientist. She was a spiritual leader and an artist. So her rendition of some of these things just have such a different taste. And this, in my opinion, this poem, Becoming the Lotus, is a teaching in and of itself. And I'd like to share it with you. I've shared it with many people. It's been hanging on my wall for almost 20 years. I've had this poem to remind me of the essence of what the journey can bring. As if I'd slept 1,000 years underwater, I wake into a new season. I am the blue lotus rising. I am the cup of dreams and memory opening. I, the 1,000-petaled flower. At dawn, the sun rises naked and new as a babe. I open myself and am entered by light. This is the joy, the slow awakening into fire, as one by one the petals open, as the fingers that held tight the secret unfurl. I let go of the past and release the fragrance of flowers. I open and light descends, fills me and passes through, each thin blue petal reflected perfectly in clear water. I am that lotus filled with light, reflected perfectly in clear water. I am that lotus filled with light, reflected in the world. I float content within myself, one flower with 1,000 petals, one life lived 1,000 years without haste, one universe sparking 1,000 stars, one God alive in 1,000 people. If you stood on a summer's morning on the bank under a brilliant sky, you would see the 1,000 petals and say that together they make the lotus. But if you lived in its heart, invisible from without, you might see how the ecstasy at its fragrant core gives rise to its 1,000 petals. What is beautiful is always that which is itself in essence, a certainty of being. I marvel at myself and the things of earth. I float among the days in peace, content, not part of the world. The world is all parts of me. I open toward light and lift myself to the gods on the perfume of prayer. I ask for nothing beyond myself. I own everything I need. I am content in the company of God, a prayer that contains its own answer. A prayer that contains its own answer. I am the lotus. As if from a dream, I wake up laughing. So I read that poem and I just responded to it. It was just, I felt that someone, whoever originally had taken the time to carve this into stone and then it had been translated, knew something about a life other than the life we are used to, an opening, an expanding. And I found it to be a guide because it described it in such a way that even if I didn't understand it, it resonated with me. It led me to look for those feelings that are expressed in this poem, to follow more teachings, to use it as a marker for what I was searching for. And so I wanted to share that with you because I read the poem. I never felt the need to go and study Egyptian traditions. You know, the poem itself was a teaching, and it helped lead me on my path. And it's a beautiful rendition of so many of the intersecting teachings from many different traditions about what it feels like to awaken, that awakening, that expansion into another kind of consciousness. And joy is the feeling that often happens, and that's why it's as if from a dream I wake up laughing. So it's a laughter of joy. I'd like to do a welcoming meditation. I opened up with a poem in case there were some more people going to come online a little late. But I'd like to have us all kind of resonate together a little bit, to be kind of on the same vibration. So I'm going to do a short meditation to help us relax and settle in. And I'm part of the meditation, after we do some breath work, will be an inquiry. So when we do meditative inquiries, we don't want to answer the question. We don't want to go to our head and come up with an answer. We don't want to figure it out. We want the inquiry, the question, just kind of land in our consciousness. And then in the meditation, we're one of the ways I heard meditation described that I find so helpful and just really great way to look at it is, meditation is an opportunity to notice. It's simply an opportunity to notice something we wouldn't normally notice because we're busy, we're distracted. And so if we can think of that, that takes the effort out of it. We're not trying, there's no right or wrong answer with an inquiry, but we want to just notice what arises within us, whether it's a sensation, a thought, a feeling. It could be an idea. It's just an opportunity to notice. And so there'll be two phrases. I'll repeat each phrase twice. So you don't even have to memorize the phrase, and just see what arises. And then we can talk about it on the other side. So I'm going to invite everybody. I didn't really introduce myself. Sorry about that. I'll talk a little bit more about why I'm here. But I wanted to start with that poem, and I'd like to go into the meditation now, and then I'll introduce myself a little bit later. So I invite you to first become aware of your body. The body stays present in the now, and the mind doesn't really so much. Our minds are quite able to travel anywhere. So take a moment to feel what it's like in your body. I'm supported in a very comfortable chair. My feet, are touching the ground. It's always helpful to have your spine be erect, but not rigid. So you might want to be supported. There's nothing wrong with being supported when we meditate. So take a moment to notice what's going on with your body. And if you need to adjust it, you might want to invite your shoulders to come down a little bit, down and back. You might notice your brow and invite it to release any tension that might be there. Same with the jaw. It's okay to have your lips slightly parted while we meditate. That helps keep the jaw from clenching. Make sure your heart area is not being caved in on, so that your back is straight, supported in. You have a nice open area for the air to reach your lungs. And if you feel comfortable, you can lightly close your eyes. Or if that's not comfortable, you can soften your gaze, and look about 2 feet in front of you. Maybe your chin tilted a bit down. So I invite you to take a full but comfortable breath in. A full, comfortable inhale. No straining. Just a nourishing, full breath in. And a relaxing, slow exhale. So again, a full, comfortable breath in and a slow, conscious exhale. And again, nourishing yourself with a full breath in. And on the exhale, invite the body to relax. And if you need to do another full inhale, that's fine. But continue with the exhale to attend and invite and let go as the air leaves your body. So allow the breath to continue on its own rhythm. But bring your attention to the breath. Notice where the breath feels most pleasant. Where does it feel most pleasant in the body so that it's easy to keep the attention or return the attention to the breath? And we do this so the mind has something to do to bring it back from its wandering. There's nothing wrong with it wandering. But once we notice, the breath is always here. And if we find ourselves tensing up again, we can always inhale, nourishing ourselves, and then again invite the body to relax. So for a few moments of silence, simply attend the breath. And then I'll say a phrase and allow it to just land in your consciousness. And notice what arises. What is here now that there is no problem to solve? What is here now that there is no problem to solve? What's aware now when there is no problem to solve? What's aware now when there is no problem to solve? So we're returning the attention to the breath. Turning the attention to feeling the sensation of a body, of being present in time and space. And when you're ready, you can Slowly open your eyes. And so if anybody wanted to share anything or just put it in the chat, if anything arose, sure. Susan, I think you'll have to unmute. Oh, Susie, sorry.
That's fine. It came up, Susan, at first. Thank you for this. And the reminder that it doesn't matter if your mind wanders is always so helpful for me when I meditate, to return to the breath. And the answer to both of your inquiries was love.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just an opportunity to notice when presented and inquiring, what is here and what's aware. It's a shift in how we perceive ourselves and life, actually. And it's not my inquiry. It's an inquiry from Locke Kelly, who wrote a book called The Way of Effortless Mindfulness. And my last retreat was with Locke Kelly. And that was in 2020, right before the COVID happened. I think my plane flew into JFK, was one of the last planes, because it was really a ghost town. But it was wonderful to be with him. But that was my latest in-person retreat, and it's been a long journey since my first retreat in 2001. That was my first time I ever actually participated in a retreat, a spiritual retreat, and that was at Omega with Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of the Four Agreements. And I followed the teachings of the Four Agreements because that's how he wrote the book. He wrote the book, even though he has a long tradition. It's called The Four Agreements, a Toltec Wisdom Book. And he has a long tradition, he has, his whole life, his grandfather, his mother, he has a whole lineage. And he's a shaman in his own right. The way he wrote the book was the teachings. He lifted the wisdom out of the tradition and gave the tools for being another way in the world, for living a different way, and to opening up to a whole different perspective of what life is. And so I did that. I followed the teachings, and I didn't have to take on a tradition. And then from there, I spent years with Don Miguel and his teachers, but I went on to other teachings with other teachers, and I would follow the teachers where something resonated, just like the poem Becoming the Lotus, or a book, or recording, or something that would introduce me to it. And there was an actual resonance, a physical, it was a whole system, so the mind, the heart, and the spirit is involved. And I would follow that. And that's how I would follow the teachings. And eventually, the different traditions, would express many of the same revelations, but they would express it differently. So the perspective would change. There would be another way of deepening the teachings. And so I just found that to be incredible, because I couldn't settle into a routine because I was following the teachings and keeping it fresh, as some of them call. And eventually I ended up at One Spirit. I am a interfaith minister. I was ordained in 2011. And my vow, because you take a vow when you're ordained, was very simple. It was to share the teachings with anyone who was interested and wanted to hear them. And so that's what I've been doing. And then 6 years after that, I became a mindfulness meditation teacher through Tara Brach and Jack Kornfield. And I found the way they presented mindfulness, and they did this purposely. Again, they didn't present it as part of the Dharma or the Buddhist tradition. They presented mindfulness as part of living the teachings of mindfulness. And so they really together reinforced the other things I had learned. And there was something I could take off the cushion, something I could practice all the time. And so I just want to spend a little bit of time with some of these. And when I saw this quote by Sharon Salzberg, who is a very well-known mindfulness meditation teacher, she's a co-founder of Insight Meditation. And if you would put up the first slide so you can see this quote that Sharon said. So the difference between misery and happiness depends on what we do with our attention. So that's a bold statement, because there's a big difference between misery and happiness. And she says it depends on what we do with our attention. And that brought me all the way back to 2001, when I was first introduced to Don Miguel Ruiz and the Four Agreements. Because the first thing, you can take that down, David, thanks. They talk about is mastering our attention. Mastering our attention. Because if we're not in control of where our attention goes, if we're not directing it, we're just being pulled all around by life. We're constantly sending our energy, attention, it takes energy for attention, to things that maybe we wouldn't choose to pay attention to, but we're not mastering our attention. We're being thrown around. And when we are, we're not in charge of our attention. We're just constantly being hooked by the outside environment. We can only react to it because we don't have time to be present. We're only going to be able to react, and we won't be able to respond or participate with the reality of the moment. And that's because when we're reacting to something, we're reacting from our conditioning or from our expectations of what we think is happening. So it's a very, so it ties into what Sharon's saying. It could be a misery if we don't direct our own attention, especially now when there is so much distraction, internet, YouTube, 24/7 news, just so much. So there's a teaching there. There's a learning here that simply taking time to master our attention, and that's what concentration is in meditation, and coming back to the breath. It's realizing, whoops, I've lost control of my attention. I'm sucked on this. Let me come back to the present moment and see what's here. And the Four Agreements is all about how we are conditioned to perceive based on these agreements that we made when we were very young. We made agreements with others and ourselves about how the world works, who we are, what we can do, what we can't do. And the problem is these agreements, we never even reflect on them anymore. They're so much a part of our pattern thinking and perception, we don't even question it anymore. And what I'd like you to do is, and also the people who may be watching this at another time, just take a moment to remember a phrase or a description your parents or your family would use to describe you when you were young? How would your mom or your dad or your family describe you? Was there um, um, some way that they referred to you? Everybody got something in mind? Well, now ask yourself, do you identify in that way? Do you identify with that in any way anymore? Or would you describe yourself, or do you find yourself describing yourself in any way similar to what that was? And I'll just share something from it. I was told I was tone deaf. So, don't sing. But all humans can sing. So, but I took it as don't sing, you can't sing, So something like that. So I identified with that. I took that, I agreed with that. Yeah. So Susie, did you want to share?
I do. It's a very painful, many years of therapy implant that my father in particular offered. His nickname for me was Stoopy, and that I was ugly.
Oh dear. I'm so sorry.
Me too. And that stayed with me until I was in my 50s. And then finally, a therapist from One Spirit helped me clear that. And when I first told her about that, she cried. And I said to her, why are you crying? Because I couldn't even connect to a human being. I couldn't feel that community support for anything but that truth that my father tried to instill in me. And I know he did it to protect me because I had a radiance that scared him.
Well, thank you. So you can see how powerful these are. And they're operating in the background. And they cause us to suffer. They cause us to suffer. And they're conflicting too. We have thousands of agreements. And they're conflicting. And there's a phrase we use, guilty pleasure. Now, the phrase itself is conflicting. Guilt is a horrible feeling. Pleasure is pleasant. So a guilty pleasure is in itself a conflicting thing. And many of us have guilty pleasures. It's something you don't usually share. But that, if you can think of a guilty pleasure, you can ask yourself, why do I feel guilty about it? And why is it a pleasure? And it only exists in your mind. See, it's an agreement you have made with yourself that I should feel guilty and it feels good too. So this is how it works. This is how we get confused. This is how we get emotionally confused. This is how we have lots of ups and downs, because there's all this that we learned as a young child, defenseless child that just had to take it all on. It was out of our control. It made an impression, but it's deep, and it's a cause of much of our unnecessary suffering. So the 4 agreements are all about dismantling these agreements we made by practicing the 4 agreements. So it's not like you have to uncover every single agreement you make, because that could take lifetimes. But we can practice the teachings of these simple 4 agreements. And David, if you would put up the second slide, and I just want to talk a little bit while the slide is up. And if you, in the book, what I like the best about the book, when you open up the first cover, the 4 agreements are right there. They're very simply stated. They are very profound, and they're not, it takes some time to practice, but we just make a commitment to do it. And it definitely will undo many of these agreements as we learn to come back to it. So be impeccable with your word means having integrity with all your relations, but especially yourself. And that's because our words matter and they have a profound effect on others and they have a profound effect on us. Our internal dialogue is in words. And if we begin to have integrity and be impeccable, we don't use our words to hurt or to spread fear or hate. We use it to express love. And an example of this is Don Miguel, and in the book, they talk about how gossip is poison. Because when we gossip about someone, we gossip about someone because they're not there. We're talking about them with others, and we're planting seeds in the people who hear our words about this other person. And so they'll start having a perception about this person without even, maybe even knowing them. But it takes hold. And so that's just an example of how powerful our word is. And to be impeccable, we would not engage in gossip. We wouldn't do that. And to have integrity in our relations, and it means to be in a state of being whole and undivided. So in the larger sense of this agreement, what you do to another, you do to yourself, because we are all part of the whole. We are all part of humanity. We are all part of this earth. And then we are part of smaller groups, our family, or our coworkers. And so to have integrity, we don't separate ourselves or anyone else from the whole. And that's what we practice with the first agreement. So it's an awareness of what comes out of our mouth and how we speak to ourselves with our internal dialogue. And the basic thing he says is don't go against yourself or others. And he says, you'll know you're being impeccable with your word when you feel good, you feel happy and are at peace. So it's important that we notice what we're feeling, because that's part of the teaching. And our system is made to resonate with integrity. The second agreement is don't take anything personally. Now, that's difficult because we're always taking everything personally. That's how we're brought up. That's how we walk about as a separate person, and we have these beliefs about ourselves and how we should be seen. So it's difficult not to take it personally, but really what we want to do is when we take something personally and feel offended, that makes us feel defensive, it's a signal that somewhere in this, we agree with what was just said about us. And we're offended because in one aspect, we're agreeing that this is what we are. But to be even more conscious of what's going on, we don't really need to take anything personally because we're not what anybody thinks we are. We're not even what we think we are. So on the one level, we use this agreement to notice when we take something personally and feel hurt or need to defend ourselves. And we look back and we say, what am I believing that this is upsetting me? And that'll help uncover those self-defeating beliefs we have about ourselves. That's one. And the second thing is, we're not what others think we are. We can't control what they think we are. We we're not even what we think we are. And I just like to have you consider this. If David, you could put up the third slide. This is from Adashante, an American-born teacher. And he says this: notice that you always have to be thinking about yourself in order for there to be one there. Meaning, you have to be thinking about yourself in order for a self to be there. What's there when we're not thinking about ourselves? What are we? So that's a larger, more in-depth look at the second agreement. But life changes when we start noticing when our triggers go off and we inquire, what am I believing that this is bothering me? What am I defending? It'll change your whole perspective about yourself. Third agreement is don't make assumptions. Making assumptions keeps us reaching into the past. Because you can't assume something unless you think you know it. You're familiar with it. Oh, I know what that is. I've seen that before. That's an assumption. Every moment is new. Every moment is different. But we make assumptions all the time. But if we do that, then we're really creating our future based on the past. Because an assumption can only be based in the past. And that means there's no growth. So if we feel like we're in a continuing circle, it's the same thing over and over again, look to see how many assumptions you're making. Notice when you're making an assumption. And in mindfulness, this is called beginner's mind. Beginner's mind, meaning when you encounter something, you make a concerted effort to say, hey, I don't know it. Let me look at this as if I've never, this is the first time I've encountered this. You could do that with your spouse and see how that goes. Like you've never encountered them before, it opens the possibility for growth and change. This one agreement to not make assumptions. And then the fourth agreement is always do your best. And that just means no matter how many times I take something personally, or I make an assumption, or I use my word in not a very loving way or a harsh way, I make the fourth agreement to always do my best to try again the next day, to come back to the first three agreements, just like when we meditate, to come back to the breath. And our best is going to be different every day. If we're not feeling well, our best may not be that good. But we tell ourselves, I did my best. So I have a quick story to illustrate that. David, you can take this down. Thank you. This was before I had the 4 agreements, but I had 2 kids in diapers. I had my first son, and then I had the second one 15 months later. I was still working. I had all those responsibilities. They were both in diapers. They were young. They were toddlers. And when I had the time, I would take them, bundle them up, bring them out, and bring them to a park where I could, stroll them. I had bought this beautiful double-decker stroller. It was one in front of the other, so I could wheel them around and be outside. And so one day I put them in the car, put the stroller, I had a big van, went to the park, we walked around, it was great, put them back at the car, drove home, and realized no stroller. I left it there, and so I drove back, it was gone, it was gone, never to be seen again. I drove home, my husband was there, and, he said, well, what happened? I said, well, I forgot the stroller. He's like, what do you mean? How could you do that? I said, hey, I did my best. The kids made it home and I let it go. And I always remember that because I really did let it go. I actually was practicing that. Hey, I did my best. I'm not gonna take any crap for it because it did feel like my best. The kids made it. So that's kind of how you can use that fourth agreement. So you don't beat yourself up. Because of course we're going to take things personally. Of course we're going to make assumptions. We've been doing it for most of our lives. And we're not always going to be conscious of what is coming out of our mouth. But we quiet that judge. We stop the negative self-talk when we just say, all right, hey, I did my best. I'll do, I commit to trying the other three agreements, tomorrow. And we can use that with all the teachings. And this is self-compassion. And it's like coming back to the breath in meditation. So we're getting a little short on time. There's another slide, David, if you could put that up. That's all I'm going to do with the four agreements, but I hope you get an idea how these teachings don't have to have a tradition attached to them, even though they do have a long tradition. It's a Toltec. But there are so many teachings that may resonate with you that you can do that. We don't need to stick with one tradition, but we do need to have certain elements. These are the elements that I found especially helpful and fruitful, really helped me when I was on a search for truth and meaning. And I just want to take a moment or two to go through this. And I think a sincere interest in the truth is really important. If we already have an idea of what we're looking for, it kind of blocks us finding what may be the truth. And the truth is like integrity. It has a resonance. It has a vibration. And we need to be with ourselves enough to know how the truth resonates within ourselves. Nobody can do that for you. So it's opening the awareness to when you do have a sensation, oh, this sounds true. This feels true. Familiarize yourself with how that resonates, feels within you. And again, be a finder. Don't just be a seeker. So make sure these beliefs that you're going to become aware of, as you do inquiry, make sure those beliefs aren't blocking you from recognizing when the truth may be shown to you, because it may not show up the way you think. And you need to know thyself. I mean, I'm sure we've all heard that through many different expressions. And that's what meditation does. Contemplation, reflection, journaling, noticing your emotions, and self-talk and inquiring about that. And self-compassion. This ability to use the word to comfort yourself. It's so important. It's so important to have self-compassion, because otherwise the journey can be tough. And we are so quick to judge ourselves. Kristen Neff did a TEDx talk. I highly recommend it. And Margaret Paul is the author of a book called Inner Bonding. And they both really helped me so much to really put effort into practicing self-compassion. And then if you can, you know, a community of spiritual practitioners, people who are involved in this. And it's even if it's only for a weekend in a workshop you do, it doesn't have to be a lifelong thing or formalized, but open yourself up to others who might be interested and looking to know the truth. And the last one is to be open to grace. Even if you don't know what grace is, I use the word grace because it's like the truth. We don't know until we encounter it. And I'll tell you that the most profound experience of truth happened to me meditating in my own living room with some friends that had come for the weekend. And grace stepped in. Grace stepped in and carried me. And when you talk to people, a lot of people have stories of just grace stepping in at a time when it was really just so needed. For me, it happened to be nothing was wrong. It was just an incredible opening. So I wanted to leave you with that. And I find living the teachings accelerates all of that. When we can find teachings that resonate with us and we can practice in our life, that the search for truth and meaning is accelerated. And all of these things, you know, work together. So David, if you can go to the next slide. And this is from Michael Beckwith, and he's a co-founder of Agape International. He's just an incredible spiritual leader, and he just puts things a different way. Understand that this particular path you are on is not the path of inherited beliefs. It is a path of exploration, experimentation, and spiritual practice, having a direct experience with truth. So it's not inherited. So when we take on a whole tradition, we may be taking on some conditioning. And for me, that was not what I was hoping or looking for. So I feel the way Michael Beckwith expresses this is a really good way of what it is to live teachings, but not taking on a tradition. And you can go to the next slide, David, please. Thanks. And this is I'll quote myself. Why not? This is from a journal entry after, I don't even know when exactly it happened, but I found the journal entry not too long ago. And it brings us right back to that first inquiry. What is here now when there is no problem to solve? What is aware when there's no problem to solve? And life as a human is not a problem to be solved. And I used to read a lot of self-help books. And once in a while, that's how I felt. Like I was a problem to be solved. I had to solve all these problems before I could, you know, whatever. It's a mystery to be lived. Being human is a mystery to be lived. We are a mystery within a mystery within a mystery. It's just ongoing. You're the most awesome thing you'll ever encounter. And we are blessed to be the mystery and to live it as well. And that's how I like to think about it. It's not a problem to be a human. It's a mystery to be lived. And we are the mystery, and we can live it as well. So there was more I would love to do, but I know that we only have so much time. And I do want to have the last bit to just be a guided meditation that's very short, and then some music and an ending poem. Because I spoke a lot, but I hope I gave you a feeling of what's out there. We're so blessed right now to have these teachings so available. So many teachers who can express it one way or another, and we can wait until one resonates. You know, it's, for me, it was a journey that had to be taken, and it was extremely fruitful, rewarding, and truthful. So I'm going to guide you into a meditation, and then when I stop talking, you'll hear another Carrie Cole song, and then a mantra, and then I'll read a very short poem, and we can part at that time, or we can turn off our mics and say goodbye. So again, if you want to lay down, this is the kind of meditation where, thank you, Hilda. Hilda, I know, is familiar with the 4 agreements. So I always I'll tell you, I still come back to the 4 agreements. If I get upset about something and I'm reactive, I go back to the 4 agreements, because either I took something personally, I made an assumption, or my words were really something I wish I could pull back in and said. So there you go. So get comfortable, whatever that is for you. And again, this isn't an inquiry, but again, it's an opportunity to notice how these phrases land for you. And there's nothing to do. There's simply nothing to do but notice any response, or how it feels, or and if you fall asleep, that's fine. You know, self-compassion. So take a full, nourishing, comfortable breath in. And with the exhale, stay conscious and slow it down just a bit. And another full, nourishing breath. And a slow invitation to the body to relax with the exhale. And if something feels tense, you can put your attention there. But otherwise, take another full, comfortable breath. And invite again a small surrender to let go. Just for this little bit of time together. And if you feel comfortable, please gently close your eyes or softly gaze. And just listen to these suggestions. Let everything be as it is. Let every situation in your life be as it is. Let everyone in your life be as they are. Let you be as you are right now, right here. Let your thoughts be as they are. Let your emotions be what they are. Let your body be as it is. Let your face and your nose be as they are. Let your hair and your head and your ears be as they are. Let your chest and your arms be as they are. Let your hips and waist be as they are. Let your legs and feet and your toes be as they are. Let the sounds in the room be what they are. Let my voice be as it is. Let the weather be whatever it is. Let the thoughts in your mind be what they are. Do not follow or deny any thought. Let your feelings come and go and be as they are. Let this time be what unfolds. Let this moment be what it is. Now and now and now. Return to the breath. Rest and stillness.
Day of the Lord, when the divinity returns to us, when living our free will, and with all the power of our spirit, we decide to live our lives in free communion with God, with no expectations. We will live our lives with gratitude, love, loyalty, and justice. Beginning with ourselves and continuing with our brothers and sisters, we will respect all creation as the symbol of our love, communion with the one who created us to the eternal happiness of humanity.
Guru Parma Shri Om Purnamida Purnamidam Purnapanurmadurchate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamidamashishati Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
In another form, I catch myself smiling at nothing, raising my face to the sun, opening to the gift of light and heat. That is me in another form, an immeasurable form, one that is in and around and through and infinite. My heart is full, my mind calm and open, receptive to the wisdom and truth that is always waiting for me to turn towards it, to drink deeply of it. I rest in the moment. No need to make it anything else. It is complete. I am complete, like a star receiving its own light. I bow my head, present, awake, in love, existing in my own prayer of thanksgiving. So thank you, everyone. You can unmute yourself. I appreciate you taking the time and letting me share teachings that have really changed my life. I appreciate it so much.